Ark Survival Evolved is one of my most favorite survival games of all time, but right now Ark is in some hot waters and needs everybody's help. Keep in mind that I'll be going into detail about pretty much everything surrounding the game, what it's about and how it got to where it is today. So take everything I say with a grain of salt, as this isn't me defending any wrongdoings that any people involved with this game have done in any way, but it's just a mere speculation as to why we should continue to support the development of upcoming titles and releases by the developers. So without further ado, this is the Downfall of Ark Survival Evolved. Ark Survival Evolved was released on June 2nd, 2015 by a small indie development team called Studio Wildcard. The game was an instant hit and picked up and showcased by some of the most famous gaming YouTubers at the time. Essentially, Ark was a survival game where you had to compete with other players on an island to fight off dinosaurs. What more could you want? Wait. There is more. Almost a year after Ark's first release, the first ever community map was made, titled The Center. The feedback surrounding this new map containing floating islands and actually good base locations to build in were very successful, as it showed off Wildcard's ability to showcase its community creations. Not so long after, a third map was released, but this time it was created by Wildcard themselves, Scorched Earth. At first, this update was promising, but the map was too difficult, and there wasn't really any reason to build on it or really do anything except maybe fight the boss or tame a wyvern. Anyways, now the game had lore, which I'll go into more detail later, but it turns out you're not an island or a desert, you're actually in space, and there's sci-fi things, and weird noises and letters left behind by people with weird names. Following Scorched Earth's release, another community map was half released to the public, and then fully released, titled Raasclark. This map was massive and instantly became a fan favorite. The map contained all the usual things an Ark map already had, except this time it added basically every creature and tame from Scorched Earth. This meant that if you wanted to tame from Scorched Earth, you didn't actually have to buy the DLC. Simply download Raasclark and transfer servers. Simple. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention that the game now allowed you to transfer characters and tamers between servers, which was a nifty feature that not many survival games had seen before. I'm going to stop mentioning community made maps now, as at this point there were a lot and they don't really have any significance to the game's popularity, but just know that between all DLC maps there were still a few getting released. Moving forward to December of 2017, Ark Survival Aberration was released. This was an absolute game changer for Ark's DLCs. This map was absolutely beautiful. It featured a variety of new creatures, weapons, tech, and even a fully fledged boss battle, which would later receive a voice actor. Although the DLC was again difficult, the rewards you got for completing the map was significantly better than Scorched Earth, which left a great expectation for the next expansions to come. The date is now November 2018, and the supposed final DLC for Ark just got released, titled Extinction. This is around the first time I started playing the game, so Extinction has a special place in my heart. And like Aberration, this was another fantastic DLC in my opinion. The boss battle is literally a fucking kaiju battle. However, 2018 was a weird time for Studio Wildcard. Shortly after the release of Extinction, another title made by Wildcard was announced by the name of Atlas. This was a very confusing and questionable decision by Wildcard. Atlas was essentially a copy of Ark, but instead they swapped dinosaurs for pirate ships and water physics. I guess they were just trying to ride on the Sea of Thieves train and wanted to experiment with new water mechanics, but this was just a really weird game and ended up being a massive flop among players. Also, Wildcard now announced that they were going to include 2 more expansions to Ark and extend the story, which would have been pretty hard as they pretty much concluded the game's lore at the end of Extinction, but nonetheless. The lead narrative writer for Ark's lore, Mark Soskin, passed the mantle to Amanda and Peter Fries. I think both of these guys are incredibly talented story writers, and Peter did an exceptional job at continuing the game's story even after it seemed like it concluded. Before I get into the lore, however, I want to briefly touch over the last 2 maps, Genesis Part 1 and Part 2. These were arguably Ark's most controversial maps, as they were kind of paid to make the game easier. Basically what I'm saying is Ark's previous maps had a unique element to each map that made them harder than the last, and both Genesis maps are extremely easy, especially Genesis Part 2 where you literally spawn in an Iron Man suit. Other than that, I really like these 2 maps as a whole, and I thought I'd just mention that there was a bit of controversy following these maps, but this was expected in my opinion, given that I don't think Wildcard knew these would exist in the first place. But what do all these maps have in common? Well, they actually have a storyline to them. Because I think the story is so well done, I'm going to do a quick recap of the complete timeline in under 5 minutes. I may overshadow some details about the lore, so bear with me. If you would like a full, correct recap, be sure to check out NeddyTheNoodle on YouTube, as he covers pretty much everything you need to know. So, a long time ago, which should actually be sometime around now for us, Earth was hit by a meteor. But not just any meteor. This meteor contained a new alien resource known as element. Throughout time, mankind discovered ways to evolve quicker than we were obviously meant to. So we started creating hyper-technological weaponry, which quickly destroyed Earth. It also turns out that element is evil and corrupts everything it comes into contact with, which should probably have been something to take into consideration, but oh well. On the brink of mankind's extinction, a scientist known as Santiago came up with a plan to re-inhabit Earth many years after extinction. So he created something called the Arks, which were massive dome-like capsules that floated above Earth containing the final remaining life forms on it. Oh, and also dinosaurs, but they're just there because they're cool. Santiago had also created a backup in case the Arks didn't work as planned. This was called the Genesis colony ship and was meant to be very similar to the Arks, but instead of hovering over Earth's atmosphere, it would travel the solar system in hopes to find another inhabitable planet to place the final remaining humans onto. Oh, and one last thing to mention, the final remaining humans are either placed in cryosleep aboard the Genesis ship, uploaded to the Ark system and turned into something called a Homo Deus, or consciously replicated onto the Arks as a survivor. But I'll get to that in a minute. But basically, Santiago dies and the Earth becomes inhabitable and all that's left is the Arks. Anyways, now begins your journey. You wake up on the first Ark, also known as the Island, with a weird implant in your wrist, surrounded by dinosaurs and weird floaty glowing obelisks. But you don't matter until later. There are other survivors on the island too. Few to mention are Diana, Rockwell, and Helena.
Hello, so while editing this, I realized that I'm a fucking idiot and I actually mistaken one of the characters' names for another character. So the character I'm talking about is actually named Mei-Yin, not Diana. So I'm just going to fix that up in the editing. Thank you.
A brief summary of each character. Diana is an ancient Chinese warrior. Rockwell is an old scientist from a long time ago, I don't know when, and Helena is a girl. And like all other survivors are from completely different time periods to each other. Why? I don't know. Together they conquer the island, exploring caves, killing and taming dinos, and finding weird glowy artifact thingies. With Rockwell's intellect, turns out these thingies are used to power the obelisks and summon big scary bosses that you need to defeat with your army of prehistoric abominations. After the tribe kills all three of the bosses on the island, a weird mysterious door inside of the volcano opens up, and they all venture inside. Turns out this was all a test, yada yada. They all have one last battle with something called the Overseer, and upon killing it, they are able to ascend. After the tribe and everyone I named before ascend, they arrive on a new ark known as Scorched Earth. I know very little about Scorched Earth, but as far as I can tell, it doesn't really hold much significance to the story, so I'm just gonna skip past it. Anyways, Diana, Rockwell, and Helena ascend again. Wow, they're getting good at this. And land on another ark known as Aberration. This time, however, they meet an already pre-established tribe with a bunch of cool techie stuff. Why? Well, for some reason, Santiago decided that he'd make element flow through the depths of Aberration, which made it a whole lot easier for tribes to advance, but oh well. Speaking of Santiago, he himself is on Aberration. Wait a minute, turns out Santiago is alive. I mean, of course he is. Of course they had a backup of his conscience, but specifically removed all insight into the destruction of humanity and everything that caused it. Together, they inform the tech tribe that there is a way out of the Arks. So, Helena and Diana lead the tribe's people to the singular obelisk on Aberration to confront whatever awaits. However, Rockwell stays behind as he is fascinated with this element stuff and decides to inject himself with it. Anyways, Helena, Diana, and the rest of the crew board the Aberration obelisk. But there's no boss. This was the final arc. The system teaches them about what happened to humanity, and now they're able to go back to Earth. But right as they're about to ascend, a massive earthquake shocks the entirety of Aberration, collapsing the obelisk. It's Rockwell, but this time he's a giant tentacle man. And he's also batshit insane and kills the rest of the tribe members. In one final fight between Helena, Santiago, and Diana, Rockwell gets defeated and falls into the depths of Aberration. With the knowledge Santiago had learned about humanity, he built a massive gateway from the center of Aberration that could slingshot all survivors back to Earth like the original obelisk was meant to. This succeeded, and now begins the end. Extinction. Our last few remaining survivors awake on a collapsed city on Earth. Although being rather safe inside the walls of the city, lurking outside was the horrific manifestation of element, the Titans, which were basically kaijus. These things were practically indestructible and immediately started attacking and killing everyone. Speaking of Pacific Rim, Santiago creates mechs. But Santiago, we're not going to kill the Titans.
This is the story of the Super Force.
All three survivors face off against the Titans, but get their asses handed to them. Santiago immediately dies, Helena gets injured, and Diana barely escapes with her. Diana places Helena in a cool tech machine thingy and turns her into a Homo Deus, and Diana lives the rest of her life in defeat. Pretty sad, right? Well, now it's your turn to endure this. Whilst this was happening, you were starting to tame your first parasaur on the beach. You eventually go on to fight every boss and ascend. Once you make it to Aberration, you find that Rockwell is still alive. So, you defeat him too. But now you have core tech stuff. So, like our tribe, you finally make it to Earth. But because you're smart and have the ability to infinitely respawn, you manage to defeat the King Titan and reclaim Earth. And oh look, it's Helena, or HLNA now. Anyways, the Arks return back down to Earth, but so does Aberration, and the big purple fuck along with it. Turns out, the Arks were pointless, and they do nothing to Earth and it still remains a wasteland. But now with big space domes all over the place. Fuck. Well, you may as well come along the Genesis ship then. Rockwell realizes that Earth was cringe and decides to come along with you. But before you can explore the ship, you must go through the Genesis simulation. Pretty simple, except Rockwell once again fucks it up. Anyways, you complete the Genesis simulation and now you're free to roam the previously mentioned colony ship. Except half of it is taken over by Rockwell. For fuck's sake, man. And with the help of HLNA, you infiltrate his insides and reach Rockwell Prime. Kapow, you finally kill Rockwell. The ship is set to self-destruct and separates the healthy ring from the unhealthy and completely eradicates Rockwell. No more Rockwell, right? Right? HLNA goes down with the ship too, and the Eden ring of the ship is set course to crash land on an unknown alien planet, which is where Ark 2 will kick off. Oh, and also Santiago respawns again out of a pod and says the most mediocre one-liner while flying into a planet at the speed of light.
Something tells me that this is the easy part.
Before I dig into the evil side of Ark, I just want to mention how amazing Wildcard's creative team is. Literally everything in this game is designed so amazingly, and I genuinely think this is one of the most creatively designed games out there right now. Also, the OST in this game slaps. Every song in this game's entire soundtrack goes so hard, and I think Gareth Coker did an amazing job considering he pretty much started his career from Ark Survival, and is now in games like Ori and the Blind Forest, Ruined King, and even Minecraft. The way he adapts every song towards each DLC is spectacular. You could be fighting a dillo on the beach on the island and hear casual bongo drums clanging in the background, then finally settle your score on Genesis 2 with a similar space OST like Elite Dangerous. I love how the theme slowly adapts over time to become more technologically advanced with the game itself, not to mention that the trailer themes for all these DLCs just go so hard. Holy shit. But with that out of the way, all good things must have a dark side to them, and unfortunately, similar to Apex Legends and a lot of other games, Ark is clouded by another one of the most evil parent companies out there. I would actually go as far as saying EA may have a competitor to the most amount of greed and misconduct led by a gaming company. And unfortunately, Studio Wildcard, the people who tirelessly work their hardest to develop an amazing game, are caught right in the crossfire of the shitstorm that I'm going to tell you about. After the launch of Ark and the beginning of the game's success, a company by the name of SNAILGAMES had bought Studio Wildcard for an unknown amount of money, and already began trying to implement pay-to-win mechanics into Ark from day one, one of which involve a quote-unquote giant tech shield that you pay real money to fuel. Yeah, obviously this is just one of the many features Snail tried to incorporate into Ark, but luckily the game's lead developers were pretty upfront and defensive about the game's reputation and lack of pay-to-win mechanics, which I have massive respect for. But unfortunately, with SNAILGAMES having the rights to Wildcard, they're able to sue and destroy this company's reputation, which is exactly what's been happening throughout the years of Ark's success. But it gets worse. On September 27th, 2018, SNAILGAMES released their own PvP servers as a branch of the Ark Survival's official catalog. After many months of people playing on these servers, some people began to get banned randomly after raiding bases. This was quite confusing, so they took to Reddit wondering why they got banned, when they weren't even cheating or doing anything against the server rules. After this, people got curious and headed on over to the places that the previous players got banned and began to raid the bases too. They also got banned. Later on, they discovered that this was actually employees of SNAILGAMES themselves. Yes, SNAILGAMES employees were permanently banning players from Ark official servers because they tried to raid them. But this wasn't all. People began discovering that these so-called developer bases, formerly known as T, were quite peculiar with the way they were obtaining resources, dinos, and even their aim was off. It was found later on that they were legitimately spawning in dinos and items. Not only that, but they were most likely using third-party cheating software as well. This isn't basic admin abuse you'd see on games like Garry's Mod or Minecraft. This is legitimate banning from an official product released by a company, which is arguably illegal as the Ark servers have a code of conduct. aren't third party and are something that should be guaranteed to receive upon purchase of the game. Because Ark official servers are basically all connected and players have basically unlimited transport between these servers no matter what region you're in, an in-game black market ordeal was formed, meaning you can purchase in-game dinos and items for real-life currency via third-party websites. I don't think this violates Ark's terms of service, as it's been happening for years and Wildcard doesn't seem to care too much, but it's the fact that SNAILGAMES employees being able to spawn in dinos and extremely rare items gives them the opportunity to literally gain money by spawning stuff in, and this is really bad. At the time, however, players blamed Studio Wildcard for these offenses, as Snail weren't the ones banning them, they were just the ones getting them banned. However, looking at it from a perspective from Wildcard, this isn't their fault at all, and are actually forced to ban anyone that doesn't comply with SNAILGAMES in any way no matter what the issue, meaning Snail employees can point the finger and Wildcard has no choice but to ban them or face legal repercussions. This was swept under the rug for a long time, up until now at least. But now comes something that every player of Ark has to face, and that is Ark Survival Ascended, the remastered version of Ark ported to Unreal Engine 5. Ark Ascended was announced in March of 2023 and planned to release in late August, as well as Ark 2 being delayed for another year. This Survive the Ark post was like the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, the bullet that started the war on Ark. But it wasn't the delay of Ark 2 that had players riled up, it was the release of Ark Survival Ascended. As stated on the Survive the Ark announcement page, upon launch of Ark Survival Ascended, all official Ark Survival Evolved servers will be permanently shut down for good. This includes PvP, PvE, and any other servers under the official category for Ark, as PvP and PvE servers alike had tens of thousands of hours sunk into them. Of course, there will probably be backup saves of all official servers, and still functional unofficial servers, but official Ark is where it's at. After hearing this news, I decided to start playing on an Ark PvE server myself, and have noticed massive bases just vanish out of thin air. I encourage you to join a PvE Gen 2 server and just fly around for a few minutes. You'll be guaranteed to come across formations of tech storage units left behind by once Goliath structures that have since decayed. There is also a video by Kona Voice where he went around to PvE servers right after hearing the news and interviewed veteran players. And it was truly saddening seeing literal families who play Ark together heartbroken about the game's disbandment. Although official Evolve servers are going to be wiped, players can still be hopeful that they're able to restart on Ascension, except they have to pay a whopping $45 for something they already own. Following the outrage this garnered, they dropped the price down to a whopping launch discount of $40 and a delay until October 2023. But hey, don't be a crybaby, you will have access to Ark 2 in 2069. I have no doubt in my mind that this is all due to SNAILGAMES' incompetence and disregard for the title. It's clearly evident in everything you see in Ark nowadays. Big budget actors playing characters in a game where the lore is meant to be subjective, weird spin-off games popping out of nowhere, forcing players to keep spending money for something they already had. This tickled the community so much that it burst through the barrier and hit mainstream media. With people like Asmongold and Critical talking about it, it truly gave some unwanted negative attention towards Wildcard and Ark itself, when in my opinion it should all be redirected to SNAILGAMES. I mean, look at their company website. It just screams boastful negligence and a lack of comprehension about the millions of people's entertainment they're screwing over. Shout out to Ark Enforcement for sweeping away hackers/cheaters. Boy, would it be horrible to catch anyone cheating on Ark Survival. No duping on their watch, guys. To summarize all this controversy, I see a lot of YouTubers make the mistake of blaming the developers. And even I have been known to go too hard on a single game and blame the developers, when it's never their fault. They're just a team of people that want to make something fun to play. They never care about the money or fame, they just want to achieve their passion. And to SNAILGAMES, you guys aren't just a greedy corporation. You are just a bunch of power-hungry vultures slowly picking away at a once-beloved franchise. I've seen many Ark content creators at the verge of quitting the game and moving on to something else. And to that I say fair enough. There isn't much we can do, and by the looks of things, SNAILGAMES aren't going anywhere. Ark is a game where you need to adapt, punch a dinosaur and get your ass beaten. Spawn back on the beach over and over and over again, but never give up. Never give up on Ark no matter how badly we lose. Because in the end, it's something we love, and we shouldn't let anyone take that away from us. I hope Ark Ascended and Ark 2 lives up to the hype. I'm hopeful for it, and I will play it on launch. But I'm going to enjoy my final moments on Ark Survival Evolved before October and cherish these memories forever. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this style of content, check out my Apex Legends video, where I do a deep dive on Apex's history of similar events such as this video's. And to all Ark content creators and players that may watch this video, keep on trying your best, because we can save this title.